I'm not the house of cards that falls down easily. I'm strong enough to handle what you throw at me.
Welcome to Mental Health News Radio. I'm your host, Kristen Sunanta Walker. Just what are we going to discuss? The intimacy that is mental health. Let's continue to make it as comfortable as discussing brain health or heart health. This show has been on the air for several years and we have amazing co-hosts. And then we created a network of podcasters on mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com, a place where every possible facet of mental well-being can be talked about openly. My show, after several hundred interviews, the format is this: intimate, deep, funny, touching, sometimes uncomfortable, but always vulnerable conversations with interesting people. The goal is to have you, our listening family, many of you who have become my good friends, feel as though you are listening in on private conversations. Thank you for tuning in and becoming part of this amazing journey with me, and now with our network of podcasters. Just knowing this podcast might be helping any of you realize you are not alone on this journey called being a human being makes doing this podcast worth every second.
After all we promised, we'd be cordial.
Good morning, good evening, and good night, listeners. Finally, we have the amazing Louis de Canonville, all the way from Dublin, Ireland, who is on our show to talk about her latest book, The Gaslighting Syndrome. I am so happy, Christine, I'm so happy you're here.
And I'm so happy to be here with you, Kristen. It's been a while, hasn't it?
It has definitely been a while, too long. Hopefully we can convince you. I just actually did a show with Aline Durio, who does Beyond the Borderline. Her show is about borderline personality disorder, and she writes our press releases. And I said on the show, maybe we can convince Christine to do more shows. So,
I'm privileged. Thank you very much. I love the fact that you're always so generous to come and speak with me. Thank you.
Absolutely. And ditto to you. So I'm going to read the snippet that's on the front of the book. It says, demystifying the narcissist's complex patterns of psychological warfare and intimate terrorism they cunningly use against their victims. This is something everybody should know. And isn't that the truth, Christine? Everybody
Absolutely.
needs to know
Absolutely.
what this is. So tell our listeners how many books that you've written and why this one came in the order that it came in.
I've written 3 books, and the first one was The 3 Faces of Evil, which explained the difference between, narcissism is on a spectrum. So people wanted to know, where is my guy or girl on the spectrum? So I decided to write that for that reason. Then I wrote a book on shame, how the narcissist projects their shame onto their victims and the consequences of that for the victim. And then this book, the Gaslighting Syndrome book. In Ireland, we have recently got coercive control laws. It's just in a year now at the moment. And so in Ireland, the buzzword is coercive control. Some people think that is gaslighting, but actually it's only a part of gaslighting.
Okay.
So I decided, no, people don't have it really right at the moment. They think that coercive control covers everything, but it doesn't. So that spurred me on to write this book, really. So what I set out to do in this book, gaslighting, it's an insidious set of non-violent psychological abuse as opposed to the physical abuse. And that's why it's a new law in Ireland. Before, we didn't really, there wasn't a law if you were psychologically abused, only if you were physically abused. But now, today, we actually have a law that people can be prosecuted for coercive control and can apparently get up to 5 years in prison. But as yet, we haven't had any prosecutions in this country. Scotland also got the same coercive control law in about a year ago as well, and they've got over 100 prosecutions. So
Wow.
something isn't quite right here. Training isn't quite right. They haven't put enough money into financing it, I think, as well. But hopefully we're going to get there. So they've made, in Ireland anyway, they've made coercive control a crime of liberty. You're taking a person's liberty away from them. So that's a fantastic shift, I think.
Absolutely. Can you give some examples of what that looks like or
Yes.
sounds like?
Yes. Coercive control here in the law now would look at how somebody is eroding the victim's reality, how they're isolating them, how they're maybe controlling their finances. They may be controlling the sexual side of their lives. So basically, the coercive control is the controlling end of all of their behaviors. And I agree with that, and I go along with that. And in my book, I explain it quite in depth. I give lots of examples of coercive control. But I was sort of unhappy in my own self that, yes, that is true, and it's wonderful that we have a law. But on the other stand, how does the victim get to that place where they are so controlled?
Right.
You know, it sounds easy.
Yeah, and it's not. I mean,
it's not.
It happens over time. I mean, it's taken me just in some family things to, 3 years of unwinding from that kind of control. Yeah. And the hard part is that, as with any person with a personality disorder like narcissism, they can seem like, what they present to people other than those they're targeting can be the most generous, wonderful person ever. So it's so hard to even put your finger on it.
And of course, that's all part of the manipulation and seduction. They can appear to be all those lovely things, and yet, there is the other side, the Mr. Hyde side or Mrs. Hyde side of the personality that is really wicked and cruel. So anyway, I started to go through all of my notes with clients. I mean, I've worked with hundreds of people, and I started to look and see what their patterns of behavior. What were they bringing in? What were the clients bringing in to me? Where was there a pattern? And of course, I could see, my God, there was a pattern. And, they all came in, and I'd ask them, well, what was the relationship like at the beginning? And they all say, wonderful, incredible. I thought I'd found my soulmate. And then after some time, something happened. And yet I didn't know what happened, but suddenly the relationship was very strained, where I could never do anything wrong. All of a sudden, I can't do anything right. Everything I do is wrong. And so I started to look at all of this. And so I have come up, now I don't know where I got I might have got this from somebody else. I don't quite know where the seed was planted, but I'm calling it the IDDH cycle. And that stands for the first stage is idealization. The second stage that you'll go through with the narcissist is the devaluing, when you can do nothing right. Then there's the discarding. That's when they more or less disconnect from you and they're looking elsewhere for attention. And then there's the hoovering. Hoovering is also taking in stalking. And that's a cycle of abuse that goes on. But it doesn't happen once, like a lot of the people who are writing, they talk about the IDDH cycle. But it's as if it goes neatly through these stages and then finish. Well, that's not the truth. You can go many, many times through this cycle, backwards and forwards, and it can go on for years and years.
True. I want to make sure too, listeners, what's interesting is as you get educated about this, we're there, these kind of people are everywhere. But when you have the education behind it and you are out of the getting triggered by it place, so that when you meet a new person that's like this, and you're far enough away from the time when you were still really wounded from other ones. And so, I'll give an example. I got to a place where they'll come in, they'll do their thing, and I see it right away.
Yes.
And I'm able to get out of it. And then, and you can kind of forget and go, oh, well, they didn't go through those stages all the way through, or they didn't. So it's really not that bad. No, it would have been had you stayed in that relationship.
Yes.
You're educated now. So I can go, okay, I'm not, okay. Yep. I'm out. Bye. I don't care what we've been doing together. I'm out.
And you've done an awful lot of work on yourself, Kristen. And, that's important to remember that.
Yeah.
So I think it's really very hard to spot them in the idealization stage.
Oh God, yes.
Because they play with your chemistry. You've got this cocktail of chemistry going on, dopamine and serotonin and all sorts of things going on in your head. It's highly excitable. You're flattered. And it's lovely. You're loving it. They're loving it. Everything seems nice.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not even talking about a romantic lover. It could be a friend. It could be somebody you work with.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. But now I got caught recently. I got caught only last year. And I was kind of a bit shocked because I'm supposed to be the expert. I'm supposed to know.
Yes, but even Robert Hare says he gets caught too. So.
Absolutely. And I took comfort out of knowing Robert Hare also has been caught several times. So, but what I did notice, and it was a great thing for me to be able to see myself as well, the minute it went into the devaluing stage, the moment it turned, I caught it, but I caught it in disbelief. And I thought, oh, well, maybe that person's tired, or maybe that person is just having an off moment. But I was alert. And so I was able to then separate myself out from that.
And I could tell from your emails, my listeners know, of course, because I mention the Red Cape Quattro all the time, but I could tell from the email chain of all of us, you, Andrea, Michelle, me, that we get caught up in them, and the time that we get away, and the less time that we spend where our bodies are betraying us with those body chemicals, that happens so much less.
Absolutely.
Like the email chain is shorter for these events than it used to be. It used to be epic.
Yes. Yeah. We are getting better, but I think that's a really important point, really, that you've brought up, really, that just because you know doesn't mean that you're safe.
Right.
But what I would want for everybody is, by knowing, you might be able to get out before you're destroyed. You might be able to get out at the second phase or the third phase, get out sooner, where when you don't know what's happening, it undermines your mental stability, really. You believe that you can actually believe that you are going crazy.
Yes. Yeah, you absolutely believe that you're going crazy. And this is where it pushes people to suicide.
Yeah. Yes. And of course, you're being told that you're crazy. Well, I didn't say that. I never meant that.
Yep.
So you're being told that you're off, that you're crazy anyway.
It's funny when I was reading the book and I was reading these, the sentences like that are examples. You're overreacting. I was only joking. Don't be so sensitive. You're crazy. That's all in your head. When did I say that? You're making things up again. You can interchange those sentences to have a little bit of a different way that the words are used, but they're the same thing. And what's helpful about those is, it makes you able to confirm the part where you're not crazy. Someone's trying to drive you crazy, but you aren't actually crazy, because you can read those things and go, oh yeah, that's what said to me.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, the more examples people get, and people are becoming quite sharp. You know, the forums and Twitter and social media, people are writing really good stuff. They really are. They're learning. But of course, there's more that's going. I mean, what drives you a little bit nutty is that they use a whole heap of techniques. For instance, there's the mean nice cycle.
Yeah.
That's when they're really horrible to you. And then they switch. And all of a sudden, I mean, they got you all nervous, they got you all upset, and suddenly they're really nice to you. And that fills you with the hope that, oh, maybe we're okay. Maybe, whatever has passed, we're all right. So this cycle actually leads on to trauma bonding. It
Yes.
makes you go closer to the person because you're trying to avoid any upset or any distress. So you go towards that person, and that creates the trauma bonding and can lead on to Stockholm syndrome.
Can you explain, because I know that there are people that behave this way. Let's say they had a narcissistic parent and
Mm-hmm.
they have not developed a personality disorder, but they've learned this behavior by being, by being raised in that manner.
Yeah,
And they don't really know what it's doing to the other person. So there's that. They don't
mm-hmm.
have any insight into why does the way I talk hurt someone else. And then there are
Yeah,
people who absolutely know and plot and plan and know every stage and know exactly what they're doing and get off
yeah.
on it. So how do you explain those two different spaces?
Well, I would explain it that we are all narcissistic to some degree, and
Mhm.
indeed we need to be healthy. If we don't look out for ourselves, who's going to look out for us? Put it that way. But so if you have been enmeshed in this kind of parenting or sibling, whatever it might, wherever it started for you, of course you become accustomed to it, and you might be acting that out yourself without knowing. But that's not pathological. Those people, if you talk to them, you can rationalize with them. You can say, that hurt, that's so hurtful, and we need to communicate better. They're open to do that.
Right.
I find anyway. However, when you're talking about a pathological narcissist, someone who deliberately uses this kind of behavior to get power and control over whoever it is they're with, and that's you're in a very different mindset then, because they're not open to negotiate. They don't want to change. Where the
Right.
other person might want to change because can see that it's causing trouble between them and the person they love. But the pathological narcissist, has no wish to change. Why should they? They get all their needs met the way they are. And then they move, when they stop getting it with one person, they move on to the next one and the next one and the next one.
Right. Exactly. Can I give an example of something I witnessed
Yeah.
in behavior? Okay, so I was doing a film shoot with someone, the director, and the director's. This just to give everybody a brief example. The director was very controlling. We all started to watch this behavior happen. He would do things like, I've put this whole thing together, meaning me. Everybody that's there for the shoot is there because they're colleagues of mine. And he would do things like, there was the love bombing stuff in the beginning, although this wasn't a romantic thing. This was to
Yeah.
colleagues. But he would do things like, in the midst of everybody sitting there, he'd go, "Kristen, you need to go get the lunch for everybody." And now where this plays with you is, I'm not an egotistical person that wouldn't just go get lunch for everyone. I mean, that doesn't matter. But in that situation, I'm the CEO of this network. We're doing this film because of me.
Mm-hmm.
Not all me, of course, but it was my idea to put this together. And he's purposely telling me to go pick up lunch for everybody. And that was
Uh-huh.
purposefully done. Okay, so there's the difference. Someone who's
Mm-hmm.
just behaving badly, someone who knows that that kind of behavior is how they get, is how they try to manage people down. That's a good
Yeah,
example.
absolutely. And what he could well have been doing in that situation, we could say he was gaslighting.
Mm-hmm.
What he was doing was he was trying to establish power with the
Yep.
group, with all of the people around you, that he was the authority in that room.
Yep.
He was sending out a subliminal message to say, you have to come to me, all of you. If there's a problem, come to me, come to me, come to me.
Yes.
So he was actually usurping your place. He probably envied you. If the truth is known, he probably wanted to be like you.
Yes.
Possibly, I don't know, but he may have done. And he was envious of you, and he wanted to bring you down a peg.
Yep.
And he
yep.
was making you into the runaround.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, you wouldn't mind going and picking up the nerves any more than I would. But it was what he was doing. He was putting you in a subservient position to him. So that's power and control.
It was funny because everybody went, here we are, a bunch of people in mental health, some of them specialists in what you're talking about. And they all looked at me and went, I don't think so. So all he did was show what a jackass he is. But that's because we know about this.
Yeah.
You're in a different situation. And I have worked at other places where someone has done that. And I went and got the lunch. I just read about Megyn Kelly when she was told, here she was up against Supreme Court justices and doing all this legal work. And she's an attorney and she's a high powered this and that. And then Roger Ailes, her boss, tells her to spin around. And she goes, by God, I spun around. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. That's the kind of stuff that they do. And when you see it, I was able to go, no, I'm not getting lunch. And I didn't feel bad for saying that. I knew that he'd try to say, well, wow, what an ego. She can't go get lunch. And I didn't care because I know about this stuff.
Well, there were a few things going on there that might not be going on for other people. And that was, first of all, you were quite aware of this behavior. Even in the moment when it happened, you might not have been able to thought to name it, but you felt it, you knew.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, you feel it in your gut.
You were with like-minded people who also were aware. However, this kind of thing goes on all of the time in the workplace, all of the time.
Absolutely.
And if the person actually reacts to that and, and gets upset and saying, hey, I'm not your servant, or, ask somebody else to do that, you look like the reactor.
Yes.
And you can actually end up like, people thinking, oh my God, who does she think she is? That she, she wouldn't even go and put the kettle on or whatever.
Yep.
But in another situation, one thing it sounds to me, I don't know about this man that you're talking about, but generally speaking, when they're exercising power like that, I don't think it'll apply to your man now, they have actually already used something called ambient abuse on their victim. Ambient abuse and coercive control go hand in hand together. Okay. That's why I'm not happy about the coercive control law standing on its own. So ambient abuse is you fill the person with fear. You find ways to make them fearful. And once you've managed to make them feel fearful, like they're afraid of will you shout at them? Will they humiliate you in front of your colleagues? So you comply. You let them have the control because it's less painful than the humiliation and the fear that you feel. So those two are really important. It doesn't sound to me like this fellow actually had the ambient abuse.
He
didn't have the fear. He did?
He did in this way, Christina,
right.
Which you can tell me if this is wrong.
Okay.
He treated other people, like his wife, badly in front of me privately.
Yes, okay.
And I thought, oh, is that what ambient abuse is? Because I'm getting to witness this deplorable behavior that I've never witnessed until just that day when everybody's there. The stakes are high. We've all flown in. And then this abuse starts immediately. But,
Yes.
and I watched him do a situation where the wife was standing outside taking care of the dog. We're driving up and we're supposed to be filming that we're driving up to this house.
Yes.
And he rolls down the window, and instead of just saying, honey, can you take the dog? You can't be in the shot. We are filming this, because she had no idea.
Yeah.
He starts this game with her. The guy that is in the film with me is a single guy. So he says, the guy is not married, hun. And she's somehow supposed to get from that she shouldn't be in the shot. And he keeps going on and on and on with those kinds of things, throwing it out. I finally said, okay, I put my hand on his arm in the car and I said, okay, you can stop this right now. And I looked at her and I said, what he's trying to say is you need to move out of the shot because the guy that's in the film isn't married and you need to be out of the shot anyway. So do you
Okay.
mind taking the dog somewhere else? And she went, oh, okay. And I could see the shame flood in her down, the blood drip, because she felt stupid, which was his intention. It was also his intention to make sure that I witnessed this behavior just before we start filming.
Yes. You're absolutely right. That goes on quite a lot. In a family where there's children, they might pick one child that gets all, becomes the scapegoat child. That might be the child that gets all of the slaps and that sort of thing, or always in trouble. But then that frightens the other children into behaving because they don't want to bring that on themselves. And that's exactly what you're talking about. So yes, the seed of fear is planted.
Exactly. And when you don't bite, because you've been through this stuff, you've seen it, you've lived it, or you just grew up in a way, I grew up in a way where I was like a perfect target for this kind of stuff forever. But when you grew up in a way where you aren't, you would immediately do what I did and say, hey, that's enough. Stop this. But the years that it took someone like me who did grow up in this, which made me a perfect meal for it, the years that it took, and Christine knows in well detail, for me to get to that place where I would say, okay, you can stop this now. That took so much work. So I say that to listeners that, give yourself a break, because my God, this stuff takes time. We're talking about psychological terrorism here.
It is terrorism. It really is. And I don't think we're exaggerating when we say that.
No, not at all. Not at all. And it's that I'm telling you, one incident or two incidents I've said of a situation where there were many more of those. And then I figured out, okay, I got to let this guy discard me because otherwise he'll be horrible. And I knew exactly how to get out of the relationship. But before this, I wouldn't know. You are scared. What's this person going to do to me? How are they going to try to ruin my reputation? Did all those things that you get afraid of. And some of them do go out and say horrible things because you haven't learned yet how to get out with as little carnage as possible.
And certainly in my growing up, with my brother, who was very high-end narcissist, psychopath, he didn't even have to say things in the end to me. He'd only a look could do it. A body movement was enough. Literally, he didn't even have to say you're annoying me or anything like that. I knew. I could read when I was getting in troubled waters. I could read it. So that's how powerful the ambient abuse can be, that it controls you, that you're trying to defend yourself from attack. And so that gives away your control to them even more so. So I think those two together are really very important. And in my book, I do go into it quite deeply.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I know, because you have this training in it, and God, you wish you didn't. Sometimes now I'm ecstatic that I do, because now I know, oh, it's not my fault. These people just exist, and they're going to bump into me no matter what. There's no such thing as some people out there that put stuff out. Be a narcissist, have a shield and they'll never bother you again. Bull crap. Of course they're going to bother you again. They live and breathe, especially in Western society. They crop up every day. But, you know, you get this sense of power because you know what's going on. You know yourself. You've done the hard work of healing a lot of these wounds that lets people like this stick around and play with you, past a stage of, oh, I figured them out. And you call other people. I mean, I reached out to someone that had worked with this person and said, what's going on? What did it? And then I find out the whole history of horror that they've been through.
Yeah.
And then everybody that was a part of this guy's company that was a legitimate psychologist or whatever, because they're a mental health company. How sad is that?
Yes.
All these people like just defected and all the people I had introduced him to said to me, we don't want anything. Everybody got a sick feeling about working with him. So everybody just, nope, not going to work with this guy.
Oh my gosh.
But had I not reached out to some other people to get their opinion,
Yeah.
that's the thing. When you're in this, you're so scared. And that's their tactic. I bring that up because isn't that part of the abuse too, is they don't want you talking to anybody else because you might compare stories and figure out that they're the ass.
They don't want you talking to anybody else. And you can be sure that they will be telling other people the story according to them.
Yes.
But they won't tell everybody the same story. There'll be slight differences in all of their stories, but automatically people think that say, did you hear what Christian said? And they'll say, yeah. Now they think they have the same story, but actually, if you were doing this behavior, you'd be giving each one a slightly different story.
Right.
But everybody thinks they're on the same page, but they're not.
Right.
And it's incredible, and it's very clever behavior, really. But that's how they managed to control everything. But he wasn't able to control you.
Nope.
You were able to reach out. You were able to listen, and you were able to hear. And what happens when you actually have had this in your childhood, and then it happens to you in an adult situation? You automatically regress. You become childlike. You go back to the first assault, if you like. And I'm sorry about the dinging on my computer. It's people tweeting my things. Sorry about that.
It's okay. You're a very popular woman, so I totally get it.
So where was I?
You were talking about this kind of behavior and when people are figuring out or seeing that it's going on.
Yeah. And so we regress.
Yes.
And in that moment of regression, we're confused, we're frightened, we're trying to stay safe. But by being able to reach out as you did, which is wonderful, but very few people have people they can reach out to that understand this.
Yes.
You and I are able to do that because we have people around us that know. But it's very hard when you're normally people can't reach out because they can't explain what's happening very well because they can't figure it out. And the person who's listening to them doesn't know either. And sometimes they get that person gaslights them then, accidentally maybe, not on purpose, but they'll sort of say, oh, maybe you misunderstood them. I found them to be nice. I found that person to be really nice. Maybe it's a personality clash between you and them.
Oh, that's like the worst thing
that familiar?
Someone could say. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He never bothered me.
So you've been gaslighted twice now.
Yeah. Yeah. And you get, I mean, that's a hard stage too, is, you're gaslit by people that aren't meaning to do that. And, even people not in this situation that just happened, but in a situation before that, where the guy is completely just delusional, pathological narcissist, and still blathering on and on about how he is, the next coming of Jesus and in his field and all this craziness. Just the other day I had somebody bring it up who was also around him and abused in the situation, and brought it up to me and started talking about it. And, they don't have the education about what this stuff is. So some of the things that they were saying could have been a little gaslighting,
Wow.
Well,
Right.
Kristen, maybe if you had done this, it would have been different. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
you don't understand. When you are dealing with someone whose brain is disordered because of something like narcissistic personality disorder, there is no way that it's going to be okay if I would have behaved better or differently. There is no way. They are disordered. Every lens that they look through is disordered. It's never going to be different. But we still, as human beings that aren't character disordered, we still try to find an excuse because we just can't believe that someone would behave this way. So it's easier to blame the victim or yourself, the victim, instead of going, nope, that is awful, and pointing at it and going, that's awful, period, end of story. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely. And he didn't get away with it with you. You nipped it in the bud. I don't know how many times he tried in the time that you were working together, but he actually showed himself up to you. You know, you weren't an ignorant bunch of people.
Right.
You weren't. Um, Interesting. I actually do a chapter in my book about clinicians, narcissistic clinicians, and I give an example of something that happened to me by another therapist, and I explain the whole story of how I was reeled in, stalked. I was actually stalked in the beginning, and I didn't. You know, we have this thing when we talk about stalking. Most people think that stalking comes after a relationship, at the end of a relationship, when they want to come back in, or they're jealous and they'll stalk you to make sure where you're going and all the rest of it. But actually, stalking can happen in the very beginning of the relationship before you even meet the narcissist.
Yep.
They've heard something about you, they liked what they heard, and they're making it their business to get to meet you. Now, I didn't know that. And they'll find a way. They might hear that you're going for an Friday after evening drink with your colleagues. It might be somebody in the workplace. They'll find a way to get themselves there. They'll introduce themselves to you, but very cleverly, they'll talk to somebody else. They'll cause enough interest to get your interest. But then they might leave it at that and go away, but they're really setting you up. And then they'll come and they'll meet you again, but really they have an agenda. There's something they're after, something that they've heard about you that they like, something that you can be useful to them. Now, you could be very useful to that director guy.
Oh my God, both of my experience in film, I came with, contract from a large movie company, all of the connections, this whole network and amazing people. So yeah, in both cases, there was a lot of pathological envy and, and just.
You would be a good target anyway, because of the work that you do. You know so many, you have so many connections. You also have a very pliable and lovely, I'm not saying anything negative, nature.
Yes.
That you're generous of spirit, and I would think I would have some of those qualities as well.
Yes, you do.
So we're quite happy to share our knowledge and help give people a leg up. But we weren't really thinking that people would target you for that very thing, but they do.
Yeah, boy, do they. And it's so interesting. I think for me, a lot of the working on myself and taking this time out the last 3 years, while I still had plenty of them. I mean, last year was, a year, a handful of pretty awful ones, but I took this time to give to myself, which I've never taken. And so when something atrocious would happen with somebody, I got to a point where I didn't I didn't go as long to, oh, somehow this is my fault, to now the point of this just totally isn't my fault. Like I just
Oh,
had
wow.
one who's a
Yeah.
therapist who seemed nice at first. I was very careful, and then started with the controlling and why haven't you texted me and and I'm like, I barely know you, honey. I mean, okay,
Mm.
we're done. And I was able to just cut it out and go and point at it and go, that's horrible behavior, not mine,
Yeah.
her behavior, and cut it off immediately. So, but I wouldn't, because we get so managed down, and when you've been in these abusive situations, it takes so long to heal, because you have to get to that place where you can trust yourself.
Absolutely.
And that
And
takes time.
it does, and each new wound opens that sore.
Yes.
Each new wounding that you get, it opens that sore. So you're dealing with that, but you're also dealing with a chain of events that were similar.
Yep.
And that's why it's so hard. That is why it's so hard. But there is life after narcissistic abuse. There's no doubt about that.
There is. It takes a long time. I mean,
It does.
I don't want to sugarcoat it and tell anybody that if someone had told me at the very beginning, when I was just figuring this out, how long that it was going to take 10 years for me to get to this place, I would have been like, I was already suicidal. So I would have been
Yeah.
like, I'll just
Yeah.
end my life now, because I can't.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that I did, and continue. It's not like I did the work and I'm done. No, these people are going to come in. So
Yeah.
it's more just, I can't even tell you a lifetime of doubting yourself and your thoughts and your reality, because I grew up with it, being at a place where I go, nope, it's not even a question. I don't even have to convince myself. I just know that's wrong. And that's where I can look at someone who didn't grow up with that, and who had healthy parents and all that, and that they just walk that way through life. I think, well, no wonder they can write 800 bestsellers and, are a doctor of this and a whatever, because they have all this. They don't have all this shite that they're carrying with them to heal from.
I suppose what saved me in a way, although, my brother's behaviors were extreme, and as he got older, they got worse. I had two very loving parents that filled me with self-esteem and confidence. But so there was those two sides to me as well. There could be the side of me, and I know that you're the same. There's that side of me that was confident and bright, and then that other side of me that was terrified.
Oh, yeah.
So those two, and somehow or other, I managed to, and you managed to hold those two things together. No wonder we'd have cognitive dissonance.
Totally. We lived in it. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you go through a stage of, well, I can be very charming, and I can be convincing, and I'm good at sales. And so maybe everybody goes to the stage thinking that they're the one with the problem. I mean, it's just, and you can have some of those behaviors, but what's different about you is that you stop doing it, because as you learn, you go, oh God, okay, I picked up some fleas from that person. I call it fleas and tick syndrome, and then you get rid of it. You stop doing that. That becomes out of your repertoire of things. It isn't a go-to anymore. You just become
that's the difference really between a person with narcissistic traits, which we all have, and a pathological narcissist. We are willing to change. We don't want to deliberately hurt somebody.
Right.
And even if we do strike out and we're a bit much, later we'll feel guilty.
Right.
We'll probably come back and we will probably say, I'm sorry.
Yep.
But they will never ever claim blame, or they will never apologize. They won't take criticism. They'll turn it back on you. So the whole thing is difficult. I'd like to go back to something you said a little while ago.
Sure.
When you were saying about the journey being a long one back to recovery. Yes, it can be, very much so. But I actually see it as a process. And we get as much as we're able for at any given time. But I mean, I actually see people saying they'll do a course and you'll be more or less fixed after the course.
Yeah.
And I mean, that isn't true. You will have much more awareness, and I'm sure that they give very good work within their program, healing programs. But that you will only reach a certain level. And then after a while, you go to another level. It's almost like another level opens up, and you think you're back at the same place again. You think it's snakes and ladders. Oh no, I've landed on the snake's head. Now I'm back to the very beginning again. It's not true. You're not back to the beginning. You're not. You're on another level. But there's many levels. Because don't forget, narcissistic abuse not only affects people physically, not every victim will experience physical abuse, but a lot will. You definitely will be mentally and emotionally abused. If you're in a married relationship, you're probably going to be financially abused, and sexually abused. And of course, many children are sexually abused by parents in that situation, where the parent is a narcissist. So you're working on different levels of the self, and that requires different work. Each level is different. So I see it as a process, and it can be an adventure. It doesn't have to be all, kicking and shouting. I mean, it can be very interesting to find out how you've coped and what you did. I mean, my strategy, of course, was I must have been the world's greatest pleaser. I had to have a doctorate in it. And what's more, I wanted to do it. It wasn't like I was aware that I was afraid. I wasn't aware of afraid. It became just natural that I would please. They asked me for anything. Of course, here, you have it. Well, can I pay for it? No need. No, it's yours. And I took it to the, extreme. And of course, some people will abuse that in you as well. They'll see that and they'll abuse that. Good people won't, but narcissists will love that and they will be attracted to that. But I had no idea how much my pleasing behavior held me back.
Yeah.
It really did.
Oh God, yeah, you're speaking my language too.
But I know now why it held me back, because whenever, again, that goes back to, I found with my brother, that if I tried to go against him in any way, any shape or form, I had to pay a price, and it was tough. So I think my pleasing was, if I keep you okay, now this was totally unconscious. I didn't know this. I wasn't a therapist at this time. If I keep you okay, then I'm okay.
Yeah.
I don't care if I'm not okay. As long as I keep you okay, here, you have it. It's all yours. As long as you're happy, now I feel safe. But I had no idea that was even going on in me.
Yeah, I had a light bulb go off. It's interesting too. Yes, it does take its time, but you're right. The journey is so worth it. You just got to keep going, because I am happy. And it's been interesting to watch people that do this stuff. It does become, when you're not scared to death about it, you're not, your body isn't flooding with adrenaline and all the stuff that can happen body chemical wise, and you're seeing it play out, you can look at it and it becomes entertaining. You're like, okay, well, I guess that's a relationship that's going to end. But I had an aha moment the other day that I thought, oh yeah, this stuff goes on for your lifetime, where I was talking about my father sexually abusing me. I was on some show where that's the topic of the show.
Okay.
And I said, they said, well, why at 12 did you, decide to tell what he was doing? And I realized just in that moment, and I'm going to be 50, I realized, oh, okay, because I realized I couldn't manage his behavior anymore.
Oh,
I couldn't do it. I was not, he was getting more brazen. He was going to do something worse than he'd already done, which was horrible. And I couldn't outmaneuver him manage him anymore. And the light bulb was, oh, wow, I was doing this at such a young age.
Yes, yeah. And the amazement of it, probably deep down in you, the fear of what might come in the future outweighed the fear of the moment.
Exactly.
You tackled him. And that's kind of like when people are so down, well, it doesn't matter whether it's poverty or whatever it is, when they've very little left to lose, that's when they become the strongest ever.
Yeah.
When you don't care whether you die or live or die anymore, when you don't care, you are the most powerful, because it doesn't matter. You'll say whatever has to be said.
Right.
You will face it. You're expecting the worst to happen anyway.
Right.
But the worst is actually already happening to you anyway. So that's how you were so as powerful as you were in that moment. And you were very young at 12, very young, to have to deal with all of that and be responsible for the stopping of it.
Yeah, it's a lot for anybody, but it sets
Yeah.
people up when you had
Yeah.
what you had growing up, I had what I had growing up. It sets you up to become a meal for these kinds of people, and you work through those wounds with every single one of them that you meet, until you do get to a place where you are still hurt, certainly, because these people, that's their intention, is to hurt you in some way or another, but it's not, it doesn't rip off the scab of the wound at a certain point. It may poke it a bit, but you've done so much work.
Yes.
And you've filled yourself up to where somebody can't really gaslight me successfully because I trust myself.
Well, you have to trust yourself, because you can't trust the other person.
Exactly.
And you get strengths. I'm not suggesting you all go out there now and try to get narcissistically abused. I'm not suggesting that for one moment. But actually, you do come out with a strength as a result of that you become much more independent. Well, I certainly did. I would any problems that I had, even quite young, I would try to solve them myself. So that made me think. I got into problem solving quite young.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I run a business, basically, problem solving today. That's what therapy really is, really. And so I came out with great strengths. But I certainly came out with things that did also damage me. But once I was learning, I can temper it. I don't say I've got rid of these things, but I temper them better than I ever did. Perfectionism was another one that sent me into, and of course I didn't even realize that. But my perfectionism stopped me from doing so many things, because for me it was, I didn't know, what's the bit I don't know? I couldn't possibly do that until I know the bit I don't know, because I didn't want to shortchange people. So you're never going to get anywhere if you're going to wait till you know everything.
Yeah.
So it, in those ways, it kind of held me back. But I got strengths from that whole experience as well.
Yeah,
I'm sure, and I know you did.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. Not, I'm not hanging out. I know better too I mean, in the early days it was, I will never have, this person will never have control over me again, this type of person. I learned that's the naivete of just learning about this for the first time. But yeah. So I know better than to, hang a banner and have a parade about anything. And I also know when somebody comes in hot and heavy in the beginning and it just feels like,
yes, it's a flag now to you.
Exactly. I go, okay, that I don't, and it's not that I learned how to have bliss without that kind of stuff, which is lovely. That's really bliss. The other is just, a mirage. That's all it is.
Yeah. But don't forget, they're all around us. They're in every walk of life.
Yep.
Every shape, every color. There's nothing on their forehead that marks them out for us. They look totally normal. So you only can spot them by their behavior. That's the only way you'll know them. So therefore, it's important that you know the behaviors.
And
That's
and
the
that can
only
take
way you can
time,
avoid them.
depending
Yes,
on.
it does take a bit of time, but I mean, in this particular book, The Gaslighting Syndrome, there's a lot of information in that book. There's a lot. And I would be saying to people, just read as much as you're able. And that might only be one paragraph. If it triggers something in you, that is actually telling you you're getting information that you didn't know before. It's triggered you.
Good point. Can't tell
And put the
people.
book down and stay with it and process it. And when you feel able to pick up the book again, then take another bit. But there's 30 years of experience in that book. I've tried to explain it from every angle I can think about. Now, there probably are other angles that I've missed because I don't know them, but I've tried to cover every angle that I know of in that book. And I think I wish somebody else had written that book that I could have found that 10 years ago. And had everything in one place that I could glean from it.
Yeah, because it is like an
So,
encyclopedia.
yeah. Now it's only, I want other writers to pick that book up and write better than me. Add to it, add what you know, and let's make a real volume of information.
Yeah.
And in language that people can understand and examples people excuse me, people can understand. And I'd
Agreed.
really love to see, it really does worry me that the police and the judges and the solicitors don't know this, because they're actually re-victimizing the victims by not knowing it. As I said, we've got coercive control law here, but that's only one part of it. You need the bigger map. And what's in that book, every police person should be introduced to, every judge, every solicitor, anybody who's in the front line working with victims, especially of domestic violence.
Yep.
They should have this information. They don't have to know it off by heart. They don't, but they need to be aware.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't have to have been terribly victimized by someone like this in order to understand it. I've talked to people that have read Christine's book, and they've had flavors of it, because we all have it. I mean, nobody is immune, but they didn't go down, they weren't totally and completely devastated by someone like this. And then they'll come back to me and go, I read the chapter on stalking that in Christine's book, and now I see this with a couple of my clients. Now I understand what they're saying, and because it's like a chess game, or a maze that you've got. Oh no, that's a dead end. Oh no, that's it opens up a world of, okay, now I get why my patient was upset about this or about that, and here's how I maybe could have handled that better, because now I understand what they're going through and I can validate them. That's the kind of stuff that I hear from people, even that don't know.
That makes me happy. That makes me happy, because I'm just sharing what I know, and I want other people to share what they know so I can read their work. And there's actually, within the book, the movie Gaslight, for anybody who wants to see a movie that shows gaslighting in its raw sense, I think the best one for me that I love the most is called Gaslight. And did you actually ever see that movie?
Yep, I did. I've seen it a few times. It's
I
an
think
old
now
movie, but
there's Sleeping with the Enemy. There's basically there's quite a few of them, but for me the one is the Gaslight, because it's black and white. It's not there's not a lot of effects going on, but it concentrates on the little gestures, the facial expressions, the wild eyes, all of those kind of things that terrorize a person.
yeah.
And yet they cannot name them for themselves. But so basically, the term gaslighting has come from that movie. That's where the term has actually come from.
Yep.
And what I do is I analyze that movie throughout the book. So you can watch the movie along with the book. And then I give an explanation of what was going on in Paula, the woman the wife. And then I could talk about what really Gregory was doing when he said that.
Mm.
And I don't know, I think that's kind of an interesting way, and you can watch it alongside the movie.
That would be, yeah, that's actually a really good example. And sadly, there are, of course, in Western society, mostly movies out there like this one Netflix show called You, which glamorizes being a psychopath. It's so completely disturbing, but that's not any different than 50 Shades of Grey, and let's glamorize that too, that kind of stuff. So yeah, you can still find that movie. I think it's on Netflix, Gaslight. Watch it, and that's a really good example. Where can people buy the book, Christine? Where can they find out more about you and buy the book?
The only place that you can get this, it's an ebook. It's not a physical book, and the only place you can get it is on my website. It's not available through Amazon or anybody else because I found them
doing
immoral to work with.
Yes.
They allowed my books to be hijacked and sold for more than twice the price. So I thought I can't allow that to happen to people. My readers, they think I'm charging them that, and I'm not. So it's available on my website, which is narcissisticbehaviour.net.
Yep.
And if you go in there, you can also, if you want to subscribe to my website, you can go onto it. Just leave there's a box where you can leave your name and your email address. Now, then that you'll be subscribed. You can pick up a free chapter of this book for free that you can read, give you a taster, see do you like it. And also you'll get then articles sent out to you every few weeks, free articles that I write.
Yep. And they're all phenomenal.
And they're all on narcissism, of course.
Right, exactly.
A feast of narcissism.
Well, thank you, Christine, for coming out of the woods and being on another show with me. I appreciate it, and I know the listeners are gonna.
How could I resist your plea?
Yes, and it was a plea. Listeners, thank you so much for tuning in, and hopefully we will have more Christine in the future. Thanks for joining us on Mental Health News Radio.
Sometimes I'm passive aggressive, but never without good intentions. I heat up and act on my emotions.
Thanks so much for listening to Mental Health News Radio. Our podcast can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, and hundreds of other podcast apps, or you can visit our website at mentalhealthnewsradio.com. If you have a question or would like to be a guest, become a podcaster on our network, or join the amazing organizations that help keep us on the air, please email us at info@mhnrnetwork.com. Get ready for that special goodbye from our resident therapy dog, Miles, and a special thanks to Emily Sohn for letting us use her incredible song, Cordial, for our podcast music. Listen to the full song on SoundCloud at emily.sonne.
Don't be surprised when I don't hate on you. After all, we promised we'd be cordial. Sometimes in you I can find it, but I'm opposing.
Good boy.